So Alyssa, are we set to go?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm seeing Plattsburgh State University as the main picture. Maybe that's just because of the way in which it's set up at this point in time. But anyway, I'm not gonna fret over that. I'm gonna start. So to make this official, I will kick this off. I want to welcome everyone for joining us this morning for this town hall designed for our staff and faculty here at Plattsburgh. And what I'll do is I'll share a screen because I want to provide a brief overview of how we're going to navigate today's 1 hour session. So I'm sharing the screen right now. And here we go. And if Alyssa can still hear me, can you confirm that we have a live image of the welcome slide?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. So I will begin officially now. So good morning. As I've already mentioned, I'm deeply appreciative of all of you joining us this morning to have an opportunity to ask questions and hear from individuals across our campus who have participated in the development of the restart plan for SUNY Plattsburgh. And as I've already mentioned, this particular session is dedicated to our faculty and staff. And if I can move my slides, we will be in good shape. And the format for today's session will be organized into several categories. One is I want to spend a little time talking a bit about why we're working to return to campus, spend some time discussing what campus will be like, and then offer an opportunity for all of you to have questions answered from the leaders who have joined us on the call this morning, and I'll introduce them in a few moments. And I also want to remind everyone that we have the full plan and details online at plattsburgh.edu/COVID-19. And as I move into the next phase, I want to just stop for a moment and have everyone just take a moment of reflection. Back on March 11th, Governor Cuomo shifted higher ed in the state to 100% remote education. And on March 23rd, following spring break, we were able to resume classes in a remote distance modality. Very fast, very, very quickly, with in many ways a tremendous amount of effort and I would say ingenuity on the part of our faculty and certainly through our ITS, information technology folks. That was 4 months ago. And in some cases, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it has really just been 4 short months. And as I indicate to you in terms of being a point of reflection, I want to acknowledge that not only have we been working here on campus together collectively to support our students, I know that each and every one of you has experienced challenges and in many cases frustrations about not only the day-to-day aspects of working through this COVID event, but balancing your professional and your personal life in the light of the pandemic. We've gone through so much uncertainty, and many days it feels like the sands just shift beneath us, and a decision that was made on a Monday, all of a sudden from some level of the state or perhaps within the system is changed on a Wednesday. So I want to just acknowledge and appreciate that we're all going through a very challenging time right now. And I appreciate that we're working collectively to support our students. On April the 10th, we began to envision what the fall semester might look like. The question that essentially that this distilled down to, would we remain 100% remote, or was there a way to return safely, or to return our students, our faculty, and our staff safely to campus with some blended mix of in-person and remote instruction? And the SUNY system tasked the campuses to develop what became known as a safe restart plan. And so again, I really want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts and the contribution of the hundreds of staff, faculty who have helped to develop what I think is a multifaceted plan that embraces safety, that embraces wellness, health, equity, academic continuity, and student life. So at this point in time, I just want to say thank you. Who's on today's virtual town hall? I have listed the 5 working group chairs. We have operational continuity, health and safety, Vice President Josie LaRochelle, academics and instructional continuity, Vice President Ann Herzog, housing and campus life, Vice President Lizzie Wahab, and Student Support and Equity Vice President Michelle Carmel. Unfortunately, the Vice President for Advancement in Institutional Development, Ann Hansen, is not able to be with us today. Also on the call are our academic deans, and I'll just list who they are. Dr. Jeannie Babb, who's the Interim Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Stephen Dana, who's the Dean of SUNY Plattsburgh at Queensbury, Holly Heller-Ross, who's the Dean of Library and Information Technology Services, Dr. Rowena Ortiz-Walters, who's the Dean of the School of Business and Economics, and Dr. Denise Smart, who's the Interim Dean of the School of Education, Health, and Human Services. Also on this morning's call is Dr. Kathleen Camello, who's the Director of our Student Health and Counseling Center, Sarah Riel, who's from the Human Resources Department, Joanne Gleason-Crate from Academic Affairs, and Chief Pat Rasco from the University Police Department. So this is your panel. So the large question that I wanted to spend a moment is why? Why are we seeking to safely return to support students on our campus? And I would say from my experience here, just 6 months, but also in reflecting on what SUNY Plattsburgh does best, is that our focus has always been on student success. But more importantly, we proudly support and educate a growing student population who are vulnerable not to remain in college. And for me, that's the moral imperative of the work that we do here at SUNY Plattsburgh. Let me tell you what we know. We know that being on campus provides a tremendous amount of support for our students. We know that our students experience food insecurity. We know our students need access to safe housing. We know that our students need access to technology and reliable broadband or internet. We know our students need access to healthcare and emotional care. And we know that our students need access to resources. And finally, we know that our students need access to spaces that are conducive to complete projects, homework, and spaces that provide the opportunity to reflect and think. We also know that students who are supported by us are likely to stay in college and make progress towards degree. But most importantly, I know that we provide these important resources here on our campus. I'm worried that if we're not able to support our vulnerable students, they may never complete their degrees. They may never have this opportunity again, and that to me would be a huge tragedy. So that's what this planning has been about from the very beginning. It's been about making every reasonable effort to support our students. Aligning with this has been our overarching requirement for health and safety, and I'll spend a few moments talking a bit about that. As we began the fall restart planning, we created 5 working groups to evaluate aspects of campus involving health, wellness, academic continuity, aspects of student life and residential life. Eventually, this came together and we prepared and submitted a plan that followed the state guidelines and the requirements that SUNY put on each individual campus. Our plan was evaluated and was certified both by SUNY and New York State. The plan began with a phasing in of return of employees over the summer, and the plan includes a phasing in of students to return to our campus community, which will begin with move-in. What we do know is we'll have a mostly blended or hybrid class schedule available for campus this fall. And due to the great work of academic affairs, the deans working in conjunction with the faculty, the department chairs, we've now completed the schedule for fall semester. And the next slide shows the breakdown. As of this moment, 42% of the classes on campus this fall will be face-to-face. Approximately 10% will be in a lecture web hybrid. 21% will be web synchronous, 16% will be web asynchronous, and 10% will remain web-based courses as they were prior to COVID occurring. As I want to continue to emphasize, the planning process kept safety and security at the center of all the campus operations. So what will campus be like? In the area of screening, students will be required to self-screen beginning 14 days before they return to campus. Currently, we have daily screening form for all employees to fill out prior to reporting for work in the morning. And when students are on campus, there will be an electronic daily screening form for students to fill out on a daily basis. Our screening efforts will be guided through Human Resources, our Student Health and Counseling Center, and we will provide and require isolation and quarantine for some of our arriving students. That will include international students, and based on the state of New York's list of states that require quarantine and isolation, students who originate from those states will also be required to isolate and/or quarantine for 14 days. Questions have come up about testing and tracing. The campus will participate in a process known as event testing. This will mean that we will do active case location and finding following screening, and then we will aggressively test any students who are symptomatic or are in high at-risk situation. We have adopted a tracing system that will facilitate rapid contact mapping. In the area of cleaning and maintaining the campus, we will have elevated disinfection frequency. We'll be providing face masks to students and faculty. We'll have commercial disinfectant or electrostatic disinfection in place. And we're currently updating our HVAC filter aspects for campus that will put us at or above the recommended requirements. We're also shifting the academic calendar. We have moved the fall break to Thanksgiving, and we will finish the semester remotely after November the 20th. And underlying the entire planning process from the very moment is that we have been preparing for a fully remote learning semester should that be necessary. Another aspect of what campus will be like with respect to our operations and phasing, we have in place a social distancing and face covering policy. The short version of that policy is that anyone indoors on campus will be required to have their face mask up. All students while in class will be required to have their face masks up as well. As I've already mentioned, we're phasing in the return of our employees and the movement of our students. And we have placed signs and signage across campus that require information with respect to elevator capacity, directionality, aspects of signage for the room capacity. We're also preparing information with respect to gathering limitations and event restrictions. And sadly, this past Monday, the decision was made to postpone all athletic activities through our SUNY conference. All this work is being done in a close alignment with our health center, with our local hospital, and the Clinton County Health Department. As I've mentioned, many of our classes will have face-to-face elements. However, social distancing and face covering policy will be in place, and we will offer smaller classes with a lower density, which will be the focus to ensure safety of our students and faculty. And as I've already mentioned, about 10% of our classes were already fully online. We've adjusted the room capacities for safety. They will be cleaned daily by our staff, and there will be cleaning supplies available in rooms as needed. And our teaching labs will be open as fully as possible. We've adjusted lab sections, and other off-campus internships and clinicals will be adjusted as needed. With respect to residential living, we will be limiting access to the residence halls. There will be elevated community standards and enforcement of rules. And again, social distancing and face covering rules will apply to the residential life area as well. We're also setting aside vacant rooms for students who are exposed or test positive. We have an isolation and quarantine space that's being prepared in Banks Hall, and these spaces have externally vented capacity as well. The residential programming will have lower density requirements, and we will maintain small group interactions. And we're going to apply our student code of conduct policies to off campuses as well. And this is being included in communication and outreach to students as we speak. I want to draw your attention to the Cardinal Pledge that we've instituted as a mechanism to establish the importance of the social responsibility and the aspect that we're all working together and we're in this together. The Cardinal Pledge asks each and every one of us, students, faculty, staff, and administrators, to do these simple things. Wear a mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands, avoid large social gatherings and parties, and stay home when you're sick. And if you're sick, please inform, if you're a student, the health center, and if you're a faculty or staff member, inform human resources. I also want to emphasize that we will be supporting and embracing our student activism for this fall. Deeds, not words, will matter to our students. We have created affinity spaces and digital brave spaces over the summer, and we are beginning actions to address systemic racism that matter to our community. So the remaining portion of this session is dedicated to your questions. And the questions will come in, and I will be supported by Ken Kennelly, who will work to provide the questions to me. I will then address the question and then filter them, or not filter them, pass them on to the individuals who will be our content experts to answer the questions. So I'm immediately going to go right now to our Q&A, to question number 1. And the question that's up is, how and who will monitor 6,000 plus screening forms per day? So with that, I'm going to pass that first part of that question over to Dr. Camello, who can address the screening forms for the students. Dr. Camello?
Thank you. So those screening forms, any positive questions or positive answers will be sent to the Student Health Center. And we will be working not only with health center staff, but some qualified members of our division to monitor that and respond.
Thank you, Kathleen. So the next question that I'll bring up is that there hasn't been anything mentioned about the financial impact on the university. Can you speak to that, please? So I'm going to pass that question over to Vice President Josie LaRochelle.
Well, good morning. That's a really wonderful question. The financial impact to the university, it's very complicated, as I'm sure one can imagine. There are many layers that come into play. There are direct costs associated with COVID-19, whether it being testing of our students, test kits, whether it be increasing disinfectant, providing personal protective equipment, including face masks for all of our faculty, staff, and students. Those elements are being monitored on a weekly basis since all of this had occurred. Our specific costs, depending on the definitions of whether it's the New York State Department of Budget or whether it's FEMA related, ranges in the $1 to $250,000, depending again on what the specific criteria is. At this point, we are continuing to monitor our expenditures, but there is nothing more important than the safety and security of our faculty, staff, and students. And we're obligated to ensure a safe environment. And so we are continuing to move forward with those, and the actual coverage of those expenditures is going to have to occur as time goes on. We have yet to, we don't know what the financial impact is in regards to tuition and our students coming to campus. Our projections are very good. Our students want to return to campus, whether it's fully remote or whether it's with a face-to-face component and living on campus. And so we are pretty much at our targeted budgeted enrollment, and very close to those students who are currently indicating that they will be residing in the residence halls. In this ever-changing world, we just have to be adaptable and manage and be very vigilant at looking at all of our expenditures. Thank you.
Thanks, Josie. Appreciate it. And I suspect we may come back and have other questions that connect to more of the, I'll say, granular aspects of budget. One of the other, the next question that's come up, and I'm going to pass this one to Holly, is about the library. Will it be open, and what are the hours? And the question is protocols, so I'm assuming the safety protocols. So Holly?
Yes, thanks for the question, because to me, I think the library is a really important part of campus. We hope to be open. We have submitted a plan that's under review right now by campus leaders, and some of that planning is how can we open safely? So we've participated in reducing seating, spacing out our seating. We're going to be covering our reserve textbooks with plastic so that we can clean them. We're going to be very careful in how we approach things. We're going to be doing instruction, mostly remote using Zoom. So nothing has been completely set yet, but we're hoping to maintain all of our hours. Part of that is because of reduced seating. So we want to be able to space out the ability of our students and faculty and staff to use the spaces. So work in progress right now.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that. There's a couple of questions that are going to intersect with one another. And one is the observation that since our schedule went live, students who are seeing the schedule, that they're discovering that many of their classes are not going to be in person or face-to-face. And so students are considering not returning to the campus. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of interest in that. I know that some of the work that's becoming in academic affairs, those questions have come up. And I believe student success in the area of student affairs is seeing those questions as well. But I want to pass the question over to Vice President Ann Herzog to address if she has any perspective in terms of the numbers of students or the numbers of students who have expressed that they're not going to return should the class schedule remain fully remote.
Sure. Thank you. You know, it is a fact that students are making choices about whether they will return to campus based on the modality or how their courses are being delivered. You know, the faculty participating would be aware that the faculty were surveyed earlier and given flexibility around how they wished to meet the learning outcomes and teach their courses this fall. And it really is not possible for us to mandate that you know, all courses be delivered in person, and there are plenty of students who are preferring some kind of online delivery. But you would have seen President Enyedi's, the slide he showed earlier. We still have a significant number of courses where there will be fully face-to-face or some face-to-face component. So we are receiving some phone calls in this office, in my office, about students who want to be fully remote. But that's just a certain percentage, and I guess we won't really know until we move further into August.
Thanks, Ann. I know that you know, some national surveys have mentioned that students are really evaluating if they want to be in a remote or an online modality this fall. So again, we will know more probably in the next few weeks. The next three questions really come back to what conditions campus would return to fully remote instruction. And part of the question that comes in is this aspect of threshold. And so what I want to just emphasize is that currently the North Country is in phase 4 of reopening, which is based on the New York State reopen plan that Governor Cuomo organized. It's based on our capacity to do several things in the community. One is our level of contact tracing, the number of ICU or intensive care beds that we have available, and the number of active cases and the number of positive cases that arise. One of the rules about being in phase 4 is that if those kinds of criteria begin to erode, then the governor has the capacity through the control rooms to retrograde us back to level 3. And level 3 does not include higher education. So as long as we remain in phase 4, then higher ed or education still has the capacity to continue and be operational in what we're describing as a restart mode for face-to-face. But the question really is that I like about the question is, well, what's going to be the trigger that activates the movement from being in a face-to-face or a residential modality to an online modality? So I want to shift it back to Kathleen for a moment and let her talk a bit about in terms of how the health center is viewing this, and I may call on Josie as well to provide a bit of perspective there in terms of what is it that we're going to be looking at specifically, what will be the mathematical data that we would want to see to ensure that we're still able to maintain the residential face-to-face. So Kathleen?
Sure. So what we will be doing, and we will be monitoring the number of students that test positive and then monitoring how we as a campus can take care of them. So we have isolation and quarantine rooms set aside on the campus in Banks Hall and another wing of a residence hall. We will be monitoring the utilization of those resources. And once we hit a threshold where we think that we cannot continue to provide those resources, we will be networking back with the local health department and with the county to discuss what we need to do. So we will definitely be monitoring our cases and our quarantine rooms and people that we're quarantining in our community.
So Kathleen, before I turn to Josie for a moment, with respect to the quarantine, can you mention what our quarantine capacity will be on campus?
So at a minimum, our isolation and quarantine capacity will be 116 that we literally can use and have each patient isolate or quarantine in a single room. So that's the actual number that we can provide on campus.
Thank you. So Josie, anything to add to the thresholds for this?
Well, I can add that through our daily screening process for employees coming to campus and physically working here, we're alerted if an employee has COVID-19 related symptoms and or have tested positive. And if you're an employee, we ask that you reach out to not only your supervisor and not come to work, but also to HRS, Human Resources Services, and let them know. There is a reporting mechanism that we also do to SUNY, and through that mechanism, we can also have a gauge and an understanding if there are potential any hot spots or cluster areas where our employees are being infected. So it's another way that we can monitor and ensure the safe continuation of our on-campus operations. We do have a protocol that's been in place since March, where we are alerted from an employee or a supervisor of somebody with COVID-19 related symptoms, whereby we do ask our janitorial services to go and do a thorough, intense disinfecting of any workspaces that they have visited and their primary work surface, also to ensure that that happens. So we're able to monitor the fluctuations, whether there's an increase in cases on our community through both the student side, through the Student Health Center, and through Human Resources in regards to our faculty and staff.
And I would just add that in my conversations through the Clinton County Reopening Committee that I'm on, the Health Department and CVPH are also partners with respect to this type of decision and monitoring too. So a great question. The next question I'll just address, it says, if you don't feel well, can you work remotely from home and not take a sick day to keep your office safe, but to continue your daily work? So I suspect that Sarah can help with that question. So Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, the first thing we offer is a work from home. So if you are able to work from home, then you can do so and you wouldn't have to charge any of your leave accruals. If you are not able to work from home, then you would indeed have to charge accruals. However, if you are actually quarantined by the health department, then you do not have to use your accruals. We have a 14-day paid sick leave benefit for those that are put under quarantine by the health department. But again, if you are feeling well enough and can do your job from home, you can continue to do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. There's a group of questions that are coming around. In many ways, it's about enforcement or the conduct aspects of not just the Cardinal Pledge, but certainly how are we going to make sure that our members of our population adhere to certainly the requirements to wear masks. And so what I wanted to do is to split that into two parts. The question concerning students and their adherence to the pledge and our requirement for masking and for social distancing. I'll pass that off to to Vice President Wahab, and then we'll come back and we can talk with Sarah again with respect to what does this mean if employees don't adhere to our requirements for certainly masking or social distancing on campus. So Lizzie, you're up first.
Good morning. Well, we've taken a look at really elevating the student leadership profile in making sure they not only take the pledge, but they help us maintain the pledge. So we're taking an education restorative kind of correction for first offense as they come in, but also remind them that without a mask, they don't have access to any of the buildings, their classes, food service. So before they even leave, for those who are on campus, leave their dorm, a reminder, have you taken your cardinal card? Have you taken a mask? Now you're ready to leave. For violations, we are going to, use education. The second violation, again, remind and recall with a consequence. And third violation goes to student conduct and up to dismissal if this is a behavior. They're going to continue putting the community at risk. But to really elevate the student understanding that your adherence to this policy helps the whole community. And you as a student, as a leader for the community, need to model that behavior. So my approach, again, in conjunction with the chief and the doctor and student conduct, is to elevate that understanding and really making our student leaders a part of the process as opposed to people who are going to break the protocol.
So Lizzie, I'll just jump in for a moment. One question that I receive a lot is, what are you going to do about all these off-campus parties? And that, how do we do something about that? What's the protocol going to be involved with that? And so I want to just turn it to Chief Rasco for a moment in terms of how the chief is thinking about working to help students both understand the importance of not large gatherings, but if there happens to be a report of this, what we might be doing in the fall. So Chief?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, sir. We collaborated in the springtime with the city police department to address some of these gatherings. And at the time, there were no gatherings of any kind for any reason that could happen. And so the enforcement was very easy. Now in phase 4, we're at a 50-person number, which is going to make things a little bit more challenging. But the intent is that we will collaborate with the city police again, address parties as we see them. In most of the cases where there are a few students on the front lawn, when we interacted with them in a positive way and educated them about the dangers of COVID and social distancing and the like, and how it appeared to the community, even though that all lived in the house, less than 10, it appeared that they're in violation, and can we handle this a different way? Just with communication, they complied and moved it inside or moved it in the backyard, and were completely legal. But we will collaborate with the city police department, the student conduct manual, as well as our policy allows for university police to be able to make referrals to student conduct, as well as group referrals for violations of the policy. If there are egregious matters that are occurring off campus, we will certainly be taking a proactive effort to try to stop those things from occurring. But if you do witness those, please contact us and we'll go right out.
Thanks, Pat. And I know that, for example, the mayor of Plattsburgh and our supervisor of the town, Mike Cashman and Colin Reed, are both interested in being strong partners with the campus to ensure that we do not have large gatherings occurring off campus. And I do believe that in Lizzie's area, there are going to be conversations with Greek Life with respect to being able to ensure that they understand the implications of large gatherings as well. So I want to just turn to Sarah for a moment with respect to employee expectations with respect to our masking policies and our social distancing policies.
Sure. So the first offense, we're going to look at, hey, don't forget your mask, kind of a cordial peer-to-peer pressure. But if someone actually refuses to wear a mask, that would be brought to their supervisor, to HR, and we can actually discipline based on that policy.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Another question that I want to return back to, and it's a good one about testing. And the question is about baseline testing. And as we've gone through the last 4 months and become I'll say, a little bit more aware of what testing options might exist. 3 different types of testing protocols have evolved and have emerged. One is mass testing. This is where you test everybody on a Monday, and then you move forward. The challenging part with a mass testing is it gives you a one point in time data point that may make you feel happy on Monday, but it doesn't tell you what happened in the intervening week with respect to that group that you've mass tested on Monday. The testing that we're going to be striving for on campus is event testing. So as we see and we get reports of individuals that are reporting that they're ill, then we're able to do those event tests and then do the follow-up with contact tracing. It's the same way in which the communities are operating here, both in Clinton County, but at every county across the state of New York. So I don't know if anything else that I need to ask Kathleen to add there, but Kathleen, do you have anything else to add to that with respect to the baseline or the mass testing?
Oh, I completely concur with everything that you said, President Enyedi. I can add that we do have 1,100 tests available for the very confirmatory test. And in September, we will have a capacity to do rapid testing so we can get some of those students a test right away within 15 minutes and be able to isolate and quarantine them.
Thanks very much, Kathleen. This is a question about the classes. Let me see, it says, given the percentage of classes that remain face-to-face, what about students who cannot return to campus or choose not to return to campus? For example, international students or students concerned about their health. And I think that the spirit of that question is, how are we going to support our students who are either unable to return or choose not to return to campus? And I'll pass this to Anne for a moment, but I would emphasize to you, with the schedule, the way it's structured, students will have the option to navigate creating schedules that are essentially online for the fall. So Anne, if you'd like to add to that.
Sure. So the communication that was sent out within the last week to students and faculty saw this as well, and also gave us some feedback in advance. Emphasized to students to please be proactive, look at your schedule, think about whether it's going to work for you, given what you desire. And if there are issues with the schedule, to reach out to advisors, chairs, and/or deans. And we've had some phone calls and communications already with some faculty who, may be teaching in person, but they have a particular student who needs to or wants to take the course, and they are able, in some cases, to flexibly accommodate them. So, I mean, we hope that with, our mission and values here at Plattsburgh, that faculty will be responsive. We know our chairs and deans will as well, and do our best to assist students who need to make changes with their schedules.
Excellent. So, Anne, I think this is a good opportunity. If any of the deans would like to just provide a specific perspective that's happening in their schools that they're seeing at this point in time with respect to helping students.
Yes, President Enyedi, I can add. So we had an international student recently who needed to take one of our economics course, and it is currently full, actually beyond full in terms of the remote course, and it would be really unfair to continue to add students to that. I think what we forget is that students have a variety of requirements that they need to complete, and so while ideally we want to have certain suggested plans for each of the disciplines, we can take a look at the grand scope of courses that are available and see where else and what other areas they can take a course. So sequencing wise, this particular econ class, they can take either in the fall or in the spring. And so we're going to look to see if there's a general education course, for example, that they can take instead, or a different one. I think we're seeing enough interest from students and reaching out to us directly around needing, not necessarily wanting, but needing remote instruction, either because they are bound to their home country or they're not feeling safe. And we're just kind of working with them on an individual basis to try to figure out what makes the most sense for their schedule to keep them on track for time to degree.
Perfect, thanks. Any other deans want to add to this conversation?
I would just echo what Rowena had said. I think faculty are working extremely hard, and chairs have been doing yeoman's work this summer and making sure all students have 15 credits and that they will move them toward an on-time graduation, even though they may be out of sequence. So I think that the folks have been working extremely hard to accommodate all student needs.
Thanks. And I think Jeannie was going to add something as well.
And if I could just say that Jackie Vogel foresaw the issue with international students probably 2 months ago, and has been working to make sure that students have, and especially in particular majors that they tend to major in, that they have a path. I'd also like to just very quickly address a question that I saw that relates to this. And somebody said, I requested to teach face-to-face, but my classroom is too small. I just want to let you know that the registrar's office is working feverishly to get all of those classrooms assigned, but that has not happened yet. So what is accurate, or we hope is mostly accurate in the schedule, is the modality, whether something is online, remote, synchronous or asynchronous, versus whether something has a face-to-face component. But right now, the classroom assignments is still going on. So you won't see accuracy there for another few days.
Thanks, Jeannie. That's a good, actually, that was the next question I was going to, because the questioner said, you know, the schedule has been redone, but the changes aren't apparent in the master schedule. And I suspect that the root of that was the fact that the classroom hasn't been updated to reflect the social distancing and the density issue that we want to ensure for a safe in-person class. So thanks. The next question is I'll be passing this one to Joseph, but I'll read the question. It says, if our first priority is safety, why are people who can work from home being asked to return to campus? The CDC indicates that closed spaces are the most hazardous, and many corporations have decided not to bring workers back to offices if they can work from home just as effectively. And so the question is, why have we not done this in our clients? So Josie?
Well, it's a complicated conundrum, but we have a very large, complex, small city here called SUNY Plattsburgh that has every facet of a city, whether it's utilities, whether it's internet access, it's policing, it's food service, it's office space, and it's a very complex environment to create a social distancing protocol that provides a space for our folks to work at. And in addition to that, we have students who are returning to campus for face-to-face services who need that, that ability to interface with our support staff, our faculty, our deans, our advising, human resources, payroll, in order to provide their broad range of services that they need to meet their academic goals. And so that's why the phased return back to work program, in alignment with the New York restart for office return to work and higher education comes to work, is really the idea is to bring back our faculty and our staff onto the physical campus to be ready to support our students as they come in, to provide an environment that is safe for our faculty to begin the instruction. Doing social distancing capacities within a classroom takes a great deal of time and effort. Procuring the goods and services that we need takes a village. And so while there is remote work that's still going on now, for many departments, it is offered to vice presidents and departments to work on a modified hybrid on-campus presence for our employees to continue to keep the reduced density so that we can ensure that there are no spikes and that the environment is safe. That's the idea of bringing people back slowly into the workforce, ensuring that the signage is ready, that there's plexiglass if needed, that we've removed all the chairs. And this is a collaborative process. It is not done by just, some moving crews coming in with a U-Haul and picking up things. It's about how we work in an office, the elements that we need. And we've been interfacing with the staff that's been coming back since the initial phase return to ensure that they have the proper safety protocols and items that they need. We're hearing lots of great ideas that are coming from those who are in the office or coming to the office 1 day a week, 2 days a week, that are helping us to make this a better workable environment for us for when school starts on August 24th.
Excellent. Thank you, Josie. There's a group of questions that connect to, I'll say, student life and student socialization. And I'll pull them together in one question and then provide Lizzie an opportunity to address them. It says that there's been little or no information on live events, except for the recent athletic cancellation. We know that many of our students want the on-campus experience of socializing and what they are able to do. Whoops. This is what happens when the question bumps around. What they're able to do outside the classroom. So what are the plans for allowing live events, especially creating or participating in events behind the scenes? And I appreciate the question because the foundational experience here at SUNY Plattsburgh is that of being able to participate in clubs, organizations, and opportunities for students to not only learn, but express and participate in leadership opportunities. So Lizzie, if you can give a bit of information with respect to how student life has been thinking about how do we support socialization for our students, but with a mind to safety and social distancing.
So Student Life and Community Living has been working very closely with student associations in really elevating online platforms. We have also brought in athletics and recreation to see if we can continue providing esports activities while students are quarantined, and to make sure that we adhere to the policy of 50 or less, or occupancy of half, and be able to do some of these functions on a masked, preventative, but yet a face-to-face process. Pat Rasco is working with us closely on that. It's important that students are able to gather, but also understand the protocols within the gathering and be able to work with each other. And student associations are going to take the lead on modeling that behavior and modeling those gatherings. So I'm really looking forward to the training that's going to soon enhance our ability to get together with safety and precaution and keeping the mandate and the numbers.
Thanks, Lizzie. And I am pleased by the leadership of our student association. They're being fabulous partners to help us with this capacity to allow students to still have that socialization experience on campus, but do it in a safe and socially distanced mechanism. There's a question here about traveling. So if you, I'll paraphrase this, but if you've taken a vacation out of state, but you're not traveling to a restricted state, will you have to quarantine? And the answer right now is that if you travel to a state that's not on the restricted list, you're not required to quarantine. However, if you're coming in from one of the, I think it was 38 or 39 states, for example, California, you will be required to do a 13-day isolation/quarantine once you return to the state. And I do know that if you fly in through the airport, there is a form that's been prepared that you have to actually sign and attest to it, that you're going to be isolating and quarantining yourself for 14 days. Another question that's come in is about housing. It says, is the cost of housing going to be prorated since students will not be able to be on campus for the remaining weeks of the semester? So I'll pass this back to Josie for a moment. And if you could probably provide some information with respect to that.
Thank you. There's really a question about two parts of that, right? It's on-campus living, residential hall costs, as well as meal plan costs, because they pretty much go hand in hand. And so I've been working with both the Housing and Community Living and our College Auxiliary Services to do an analysis and determine whether the amount of service, food days, or in residence halls is equivalent to what they would have been charged in the past. And quite honestly, there will be no reduction in the amount of cost for fall, because there is really a very limited adjustment to the services that are being provided. Just to give you an idea, in regards to the number of food days for the time that the students are starting to come in to the end of the Thanksgiving when they leave, it's 102 feeding days. The current, without the academic calendar adjustments, it would have been 108 and a quarter days. And then when you factor in isolation and quarantine, food service for students, as well as services for students who have to come 2 weeks ahead of time because they have to do isolation and quarantine for both the residential hall as well as for dining services, the actual cost of the services and to provide those specialized COVID-related health and safety requirements, the cost of providing those is actually greater, but we are clearly not adjusting those numbers anywhere upward, but there will be no reduction in the cost to the students.
Thanks very much, Josie. There's a couple of questions that have come back around, I'll say, conduct and responsibility with respect to the students. And one of them is with respect to, what if a student refuses to complete the daily form with respect to self-screening, and if they're not complying with a face mask? So what would be the repercussions? So I think maybe Holly can address the on-campus form as to how that will likely be created to ensure, I'll say, compliance. So Holly?
Well, all I can say at this point is that we have several ideas about how we might be able to ensure compliance, but to my knowledge, nothing has yet been finalized.
Okay.
I don't know, Josie, if the OCHS team has finalized those mechanisms.
So what I can say at this point in time is we're still in the development stages of the student daily health screening that will be done once school starts. So to be supportive for all of our students who are coming to campus for services effective August 24th. So those are still under development, and there are a number of components and ideas, as Holly indicated, that we are working on. The most important part right now is to ensure that the students can begin using the daily health screening form starting as early as Monday exist for those who have to come to campus earlier than August 24th, whether they're living in the residence halls or perhaps they're CAs and other groups that are coming in early in advance of that. So that's the push right now, is for that group. And then phase 2 will be the mechanisms and the kind of the rules behind the form for the rest of the student population in regards to class start on August 24th.
Thanks, Josie. Thanks, Josie, and thanks, Holly. The final part of that question was, we have a student that just refuses to wear their face mask. What are you going to do about it? And so I'll pass that over to Lizzie at this point in time to let the group know what is the plan for dealing with a student who's a little bit hesitant to put that mask up.
Well, if that does happen and you've talked to the student and the student is absolutely unwilling, they are violating a campus safety protocol and has to be referred to student conduct. You know, there will be instances where education is not going to work. It's consequences, and that would be a consequence-based. Again, you know, for abundance of caution and for the safety of the community, that's what our main intent is, that we keep each other safe. And so a student's, you know, deliberate attempt not to follow that protocol can result to disciplinary action up to dismissal.
Okay, thank you, Lizzie. A couple of questions have come in with respect to, again, the threshold and counting of cases. And the first question is, will off-campus student cases be counted in a threshold for a campus response? And I'm going to pass that off to Kathleen for a moment for her response. Kathleen?
Sure. So those off-campus cases, generally we will be the people that on the Student Health Center that will be testing them. So we will know about the off-campus students. So those numbers will be in the matrix of our total cases. I mean, I work closely with the health department. I'm the vice president of the Board of Health. So I get daily updates on the community, what's going on in the community. So as I see numbers either start to spike, et cetera, I am in close contact with John Canosa, the director of the Clinton County Health Department. So we will be monitoring the community, whether it be the students living on campus or off campus, and our community at large.
And so I think, Kathleen, another question that was embedded in the Q&A was, if a student is off campus and is required to isolate or quarantine, will that occur in their student house, or will that happen here on campus?
So that, as it did last semester, what will happen is the health department will review their living condition and make sure that it meets the requirements of being able to quarantine or isolate in their residence. So they will be the ones monitoring that.
Okay. And the other piece is that any off-campus event will be monitored by the local health department as well. They will treat that student just like they treat a member of the community, correct?
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen. I'm distressed to see that we have 4 minutes to go in our session, and I still have 43 open questions. And actually, it just dropped to 42. But one of the questions that I want to perhaps finish off with today is, faculty have been given the choice to teach remotely or face-to-face depending on their comfort. Why haven't professional staff been given that same choice? And I'll pass that off to Ann Herzog in just a moment, but what I would say is that when we switched to remote instruction this past spring, the majority of our faculty continue to use their offices and use the classroom spaces on campus. And so there was although we shifted in modality, faculty still were on campus doing their work to provide the educational experience for our students. Additionally, we have many classes on our campus that are too large to actually fit into the spaces based on the assessment that's been done by facilities. So it's not going to be possible for certain classes to even be offered in the spaces that we have on campus to assure social distancing and safety for both the instructor and for the students. But with that, I'll pass it off to Ann Herzog.
Yeah, thank you. I would simply comment that the definition of faculty roles and responsibilities includes academic freedom. And as long as faculty members are working to meet the learning outcomes specified for courses for the curriculum, they do have that academic freedom around the mode of delivery. So that would be my quickest answer, I guess I would say, to that question.
Thank you, Ann. But I have 3 minutes to go. Before I begin to wrap this up, there's a really good question. I know that Steve Dana is on the call. The question is, I'm concerned about the branch campus population getting lost in the shuffle. Are they receiving the same attention, resources, and support? So Steve, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate that question. We're individualized down here. We're small, and so our students reach out to us and the faculty, and we've had a good relationship with SUNY Adirondack. In fact, Bryan Hall, where our courses are held, this hall is the first to be retrofitted for a COVID-safe environment. So we have the supports in place here in the building. We're going to rely on the same services we always have through SUNY Adirondack and through main campus. And just as a case of where we're at right now, we had 3 students reach out to us in the last few days saying, comfortable taking face-to-face classes. What can we do?
I believe we're back. I'm not sure, did you just lose me, Steve, or did everyone drop off?
Everyone was frozen, so I'm not sure what happened there.
All right, well, I want to thank Alyssa, who's working in the background to make sure that we were all up here. So Steve, did you finish your response? I'm not sure how far you got.
Yeah, I think so. I'll just summarize it and say we're in a good place. We are staying on top of every student, making sure they have what they need. And we're doing that with our partners, the SUNY Adirondack, and all the supports we get from our main campus colleagues. So we're good to go. And thank you for that question again.
You're welcome, Steve. And I know that we tremendously value the partnership that we have with Queensbury and the support of the students that are Cardinals, but 2 hours away. I want to indicate that we are at the end of our session for today, and a couple of housekeeping issues. One is there were probably 51 questions that remained in the chat with respect to the Q&A. Each of those questions will be answered along with the other questions that were present. Those will all be posted as essentially an FAQ that will accompany this particular video presentation. I want to again reinforce that this is a restart plan. And we've been working for nearly 4 months to establish a plan that will help us serve our students and our faculty and our staff in the most safe way possible. We are in many ways at the whim of the governor of New York at this point in time. And so if the governor makes the decision at some point in the next few weeks that we are remote, then you know where we'll be. We will be remote. But I am very proud and very excited by the efforts that have happened across our campus from faculty, from staff, from administrators, and the student input with respect to a plan to be able to restart the campus with lower density, the capacity to have social distancing, to be safe, to have our, essentially the capacity to know what we need to be doing with respect to testing and contact tracing, academic continuity, the work that we've done with respect to so I'll say essentially student activities and student residential life, and the development of the pledge. And I would just mention as one final comment, our pledge extends into the community. And I'm having conversations with both Michael Cashman and Colin Reed about how do we get our community to mask up as well. Because if we expect our students to be behaving in a certain way, then our community needs to have reciprocity and also mask up as well. So we'll be working in the next few weeks to develop a campaign that not only welcomes our students back to campus, but lets the community know that we're in this together. And there's a tremendous amount of symbiosis or synergy that occurs when our students are present in this community. So with that, I want to thank you all for being present. I know that there's been a tremendous amount of work, and certainly there are certain questions that remain open, but I want to assure you that the questions will be addressed and they will be posted. So with that, I wish you all well today, and thank you very much. And this may sound a little cliche, but Cardinal strong, and every day is a great day to be a Cardinal, everybody. So thank you very much for tuning in.